Afternoon, everybody present here today at IIDA Summit 3.0, Indian Interior Design and Architecture Summit 2023. I am Kamalaja Tamboli, editor at the Architect's Diary, and I warmly welcome you all to this year's summit. So, our topic for this year is architecture and beyond, building communities by the people, for the people. And under the same umbrella, we have wonderful architects and designers from across India who have come up for this amazing panel discussion on residential architecture and housing and with respect to community spaces. That is architect Deepa Suriyaprakash ma'am, founding partner of Betweenlines, Bangalore. So Deepa ma'am has completed her architectural education from National Institute of Technology and professional training at Brand New Day, Oroville, and MOAD from Chennai. She pursued her education in theory of architecture and design from the Ohio State University, USA. Upon completing the master's program, which included extensive traveling opportunities, she worked with Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill LLP in Chicago, USA, where she gained experience working on macro scale projects. Since her return to India in 2008, she has been leading Between Lines with her partner, Mr. Guru Prasanna sir. Her interests include travel, teaching, narratives, critical theory, graphic design, pattern and material studies, etc. So, apart from her practice, she also teaches architecture and interior design at RV College of Architecture. Her 2 year stint as head of research at CNT Architects grounded her perspective and realigned her philosophy with the locale. So, when not working as an architect, she is busy composting and helping people keep their waste off in landfills. So, thank you so much. I humbly welcome you, Deepa ma'am, and we are really looking forward to your individual address.
A spatial scale, I would look at this topic from the material scale, and sort of share our journey so far in the profession also. So this is a little sort of a like a flow chart to show where I started as an architect and how things came together and where we are currently. So as a student, I was interested in material, and there was a constant exploration, in sort of understanding new materials and how they come together, etc. And around 2015, I fully plunged into the waste management bit, and I run a sort of a small company which helps people to sort of manage their waste and segregate waste. When I got into this full time, the awareness about material, where it comes from, what happens to it, how we use it, how we discard, all of that got quite heightened. So, with an already strong inclination with the material exploration, this became another layer wherein I started sort of looking for materials that is starting at a very good eco footprint. So obviously that sort of shows in the process and the projects that we have done subsequently. I want to start with sort of pointing out, as when we speak about material, and this is rather in the domestic scale. I mean, the whole presentation is pointing to the fact that we want to work in a scale which is buildable by people with their own hands, much like the earlier times. So this sort of compares and shows what used to be the definition of building material up until we sort of hit that industrial revolution, and what has been happening from then to now. I wouldn't read into the adjectives or definition. I'm leaving it for the audience to understand. But we can understand that something which was very local, doable, reusable, even from the knowledge point of view, made a huge shift in the last century. So much so that we are requiring experts to build our house, and the whole idea of doing something by your own has kind of faded away. And from the waste management perspective, one major learning I had is to approach life, not just practice, in this cradle to cradle model. And to sort of extrapolate from the previous slide that I showed, one can see that we did have practice like that, and then we have sort of gone into this trip of saying that we are modernizing, industrializing all our material, and we have reached the peak, and post COVID, we are still getting into a linear model of cradle to death idea, considering that the building industry is one of the major waste contributors. I think we designers and all the other stakeholders have to take a serious look at this. So we are at that juncture where I feel that before it sort of falls head on, we can still sort of recuperate the situation and then go back into that cradle to cradle model, which is a very cultural idea for us. We as Indians, we are very frugal in nature. And I remember even 20 years back, we used to actually be one of the countries who recycles most and reuses and readapts. But in the last 20 years, I think with all the other development, we have lost that streak. So this is a strong call for people to sort of reconsider that cultural practice we have. All right, so you can just quickly realign to whatever I was talking about. And that's the kind
Yeah.
of difference I was talking about with the material definition that we were handling and we are heading to handle currently. And that's the kind of the peak and the fall I was talking about. So the hypothesis here is that we have material available for construction currently. When we look at sort of, when I say biosphere, what can be taken from earth, of sometimes renewable, sometimes non-renewable, but reused. And technosphere is when it is an industrial material, but it can be recycled and the worth of it still retains, it can be reused. And predominantly we are building in that front. And but the affordability of it is actually reducing quite a bit. On the other hand, the conundrum is that we are producing a lot of man-made waste, not just in construction industry, but from various other industries. Many of them have properties that can very well be used in the construction industry, especially housing. And with the abundance of that, if we sort of crack the model of making more material out of this human made waste, we may be able to sort of solve the problem that we are talking about. And to me, as an architect, I see that housing is becoming more and more unaffordable for a common man, or even to a middle class person. The aspiration is there, but the goal is so far high to reach, it becomes quite difficult to achieve that. So the conundrum, of course, is that we don't have people to build with these alternative material. So the call is also to see, as we as designers, if we work on kind of creating these prototypes or testing them and exploring them, maybe we will open up channels to make them into prolific material. Um, so if you're looking at sort of material as reused matter and the sources from different places, moving out of this sort of biosphere and technosphere, we could be looking at it like a building sphere. And the presentation is not going to, like I mentioned earlier, look at a single or few projects that we have completed, but look at the idea of this adaptive reuse from different verticals. And I will be showing a couple of slides to sort of reinstate that point. But where we are heading with it is to see that if you're breaking down housing, and if I feel the way to sort of cut down the cost or make it affordable, one is by being able to have the empowerment to build it by yourself, and second is to have material that can become affordable. This obviously is going to focus a little more on the later part of it, of what are the ways we could be reusing some of this material which is available for us. So I'll just, like I said, would be going through this vertical and showing a couple of examples. So here's an option of reusing waste that within the construction industry. So this is a project by Mode. When I was a junior architect, this is my first project we worked, and we picked up these Kadapa trims from the granite store and made this gabion wall. And the call is to say that, okay, if we pick up these material, we could be making a mass out of it, and it can have an aesthetical effect also. And here, this is one of our recent project, which is being published at the Architects Diary, also Breathe, it's called. And here, what we did was to, in order to protect a mud wall, we used these quartz and granite trims that we again bought for practically no cost from our usual vendors, and used them as this kind of a composite wall system. So each layer of the brick is protected from it. So this is also a call to see how what we typically consider waste can start becoming like a tectonic innovation in architecture. And to look at reusing as an afterlife, in which we are taking a material which is as it is there and then sort of reusing it in the context of building or architecture. This is an example where the windscreens of a car are used as a facade element, and this is a students project run by Rural Studio in Alabama. And we have modern age in our current contemporary examples quite a bit from wall makers who use a lot of these machine parts, as grills and things like that. This is one of our proposal for a resort in Sakleshpur, where we considered hume pipes as the sort of sleeping cabins. Again, like I said, in this idea, it is to not disintegrate, not go through that energy consumption of recycling something, but using something which is as it is done. So this proposal was showing how we could be using hume pipes for like sleeping cabins. This is one of our very early projects where, I mean, it was again like, I think in 2009 we built a small pod for like 4 lakhs or something like that. So we had to put up one toilet outside, and we sourced this old coin telephone booth and then literally fit it in the site. So the idea again is to say, not rework on it too much, but then readapt it. The other vertical in reuse we look at is to sort of look at retaining the embodied energy. It's an extension of the previous idea. So when we talk about embodied energy, a certain amount of labor force and energy is dedicated into making something, and rather than doing something new and reusing that energy, when we are utilizing this existing energy which is built into that material or the component, then we are being low impact in our efforts too. So this is a house I built for my aunt in Chennai in 2015-16, and this house had no budget, and she being my aunt, I pulled all strings to really dive into the second sale market in Chennai. And we picked up, used bricks and grills and floor tiles. And we picked up these tiles, which are like leftover pieces from the showrooms, tile showrooms. And pretty much the entire house is built with this notion of, it's like a second-hand house. Most of it is like already used, and then it is out there in the market for a subsidized cost, and we were able to pick it up and reassemble. So the whole pursuit didn't involve our typical drawing details. This is an example of a set of grills which we bought to cover the courtyard, and once we had it in place, we had to organize it in situ. Mm. And incidentally, this seems like a sort of a new idea, but in the market, in the seconds market, from doors to grills to furniture to a lot of components are out for sale. It's an organized market, and a lot of people who are still working and in a low income group, or people who even want to say, I want to just repurpose this, go to these markets and use it, and build their places, or say replace a door, etc., at a given moment. So I think I felt quite excited about the possibilities it opened up, in terms of for us designers to say, okay, there's a huge gamut of materials available there, where we could sort of be picking it up and rethinking the way we draw and design. This is the same house where I picked up some ventilator shutters from Bangalore and sent it to Chennai, and those became kitchen shutters. And the tile story I told you, and I could also mix different textures and finishes. Earlier, I wouldn't have mixed like oxide and vitrified floor tiles together. And in this juncture, out of sheer desperation to like sort of cut cost, we went all the full length, so we could work out details like this. And that house is known for this kind of ad hoc but carefully put together aesthetics. And the other thing, which in one part I'm talking about, is the people's participation, because we were talking about this, right, in affordability housing, how it's important for people to also feel empowered, which we used to have and seems to have lost in the recent past. And in order to sort of keep the people's participation on, it's a certain attitude. So these are images from this really small town called Thiruvanur, which is part of Chitradurga district. We visited this as part of our studio sort of study. And we realized that there is a huge fort wall, which are built with this dry masonry, like slat stones. And the people in this little village are free to just go and sort of deconstruct it, get some and then make one front wall and, add to that, maybe do some plaster. So it's like ship of thesis. Like they go and then they pick up the stuff from the fort wall, and then most of the houses in the village is like has a similar aesthetics because of this particular act, and the fact that they all also are able to build it themselves. And you can see more examples, and then you can also see that later, I mean, this is not hung up on the aesthetics of a designer's final product. It is an ongoing aesthetic evolution. So in a way everything fits, in a way, as long as people know how to fix it, how to build it by themselves, they evolve the aesthetics, which is interestingly also contextual and climatically responsive. This is a project we worked earlier in 2013. We had a request from our yoga teachers who wanted to lease a place in Bidadi and put up a goshala because the land is not theirs and they may had to vacate at any point. They asked us to design a system in which A, they can quickly assemble it, B, that they don't invest a lot of money but be able to dismantle and reassemble the same structure in another land if they have to move. So my work partner and life partner, Mr. Guru, he sort of came up with these joinery details in steel that we will fabricate and then use acacia poles to sort of erupt, like erupt the structure. And it is joinery was worked in a very simple, easy for a layman to understand and put it together manner. So the idea here again is like do it yourself, like a DIY model. And if we further sort of pursue this work, then the house also can come in a kit. It can come in a kit where people can just sort of unbox it and then put it together. And a version of that idea is still prevalent in the West. Like a lot of people build it themselves because it is more affordable to build it themselves. And I think in our culture we have to revisit that idea again. This is another render where, again, the corrugated panels which are sort of covering the place is all from Sahas, who make these corrugated panels out of Tetra Pak waste. So this was put together. Again, always there has been this cost constraint which has pushed us beyond the envelope to check the possibility of things, and this is one of those projects which is very dear to us. This is a more recent project. We had to do like these test beds on the terrace of Terry, Tata Energy Research Institute. And again, it was a no budget project. At this point in time, we were really looking into a lot of interior industry waste. Typically, the plywoods, you go into these factories and cut plywood, paste, laminate. There's a lot of these trims that were left out, and one of our dear friends runs a factory, so we got a whole lot, again only paying for the transport. And this structure was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to be there for just a year to go through one full cycle of season and then live study the conditions. It's called test beds. So with again no budget at all, we sourced the material like this. By then we were looking at how to put it together, and we invited students from the institutions where we teach, and with two other carpenters this whole structure was erected. So we departed a little bit from saying that typically students sort of want to go to the workshops where they're learning earth construction. Nothing wrong with it, but we wanted to introduce them to other ways of looking at materials and not discard something which is not natural, something which is not of the earth as synthetic or industrial. We wanted to open up the idea that any material, if detailed well together, can suffice. And the other vertical of recycling is to sort of retain its inherent properties. This is not our project, this is a research project where plastic waste is converted into compressed into brick blocks because it has an inherent waterproof quality to it. Obviously, this house is going to be like well shielded from seepage. So this is another idea which is really interesting to us. We have our own brickmaking machine in our firm, and every time we are looking at some kind of a residue, we are working together, a combination, and trying to make bricks that could serve a certain purpose. Like currently, we are working with an interested person from Rajasthan who contacted us to look at the marble quarry waste and see if we can make blocks out of it. We also are working on another project where there's foundry waste available because of the nature of the client's industry, with which we are trying to see if we can make bricks and whether their compression strength is different or there's a tensile property attached to it because of the basis of the material. Another example where a single use plastic bottle sort of solves the problem of lighting. This is one of my dear projects. I'm to show here that how the inherent property of a material which is considered waste otherwise or discarded otherwise can make a huge difference. This is in line with the same Terry project. When we were beginning to explore those ply trims, we also realized that in exposed work, whether it's concrete or rammed earth, which we do in our projects, we spend a lot of money in the shuttering system. So we were trying to see whether if we are able to paste these ply trims and then make these shuttering boards, which will also leave an impression on the resultant product and create a kind of an interesting byproduct aesthetics. Um, the other vertical is to see that how do we, if we want again a mass, and how do we fill it? And the fill can be so many different things. It doesn't have to be a typical conventional masonry only. Um, so this is a project which we are currently working on, which is the same client where I mentioned about foundry dust. So we are planning to sort of make blocks or sandbags with these foundry dust put together, and these are like little pods for sleeping and meditation for the employees in this rather big industrial setup. So from the aesthetics to assembly and everything, we wanted to source the material from that industrial campus itself, and currently we are testing the strength of the blocks. Another example to say that how the infill can be aesthetically extremely pleasing and sensitive also if it is sourced from the locality and for no cost. This is again Breathe, the project which I showed earlier. This is at the foundation level. Here, what we did was we pulled up the boulders from the side, reused it at the foundation level, and we also questioned, if we need to have PCC because this is the same earth, this is the same boulder which is sitting in the very earth, and we rebuilt the foundation with it. We also went the next step and then looked at the load transfer with the structural engineer, and then we found these arc conditions, inverted arc conditions, where it is just dead load of the foundation structure itself. So those, what we did was we replaced it with these tire discs which we rammed at site. We were going to do rammed earth walls later, but we just had these tires we picked up from JC Road and then rammed them, and they became like these massive compressive blocks, and we could fill it in and eliminate the need to use a uniform stone masonry in the foundation level. So the idea is again to see where there is excess, we can be filling it with something which can be just a filler, and really reduce the cost and effort in amassing the structure. And finally is like we could even be creating great architectural sort of effects or environment using when we are looking at material differently, and that can be sourced. This is a pavilion built with these fence rolls, and let allowed to rust, so it creates this kind of a very ephemeral feeling to it. And this is one of our earliest project, again the one in which we showed the telephone booth becoming a toilet, where we built this pod, and with a casual conversation we just said what if we use bottles, but not as just a token element but as an entire masonry system. So this entire pod was built with beer bottles, and so that creates an ambience or affect which is unparalleled when we are looking at a conventional material. So I want to close the presentation with this quote, about opening up our horizon and seeing the possibilities with things that is around us, and also as designers, a call to sort of request and integrate a system in which we include the whole construction process, include people's participation, and make things a little affordable. All of us do have varied set of clients, and we do work with varied budgets. But I think it'll be really nice if we have a research project kitty in which explorations like this happens. Therefore, we at some level extend our sort of role in making homes affordable for people. It is a digression from the main topic, but I hope I've touched upon certain areas and made people sort of critique the ongoing course of work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deepa ma'am. It was quite enriching, and we have published your works before, and seeing the process of it actually gave us an insight into how this wonderful designs were conceived, and what your thought process in that too such a critical one. I mean, you really went into the layers of it, so really appreciable.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.